Welcome to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid. A set of conversations about our government, our politics, and the kind of country we aspire to be. And now, here's your host, Edwin Eisendrath, on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Oh, hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. It is cold but beautiful here in Chicago. And I don't know if you've had this experience. I was finishing a novel. I was racing to finish it before this show, and I did. But that transition from the world of good fiction into the world that you and I talk about every week is not smooth and easy. And you know what? And it gives me new insight because Donald Trump never makes a transition from fantasy and fiction to the real world. I mean, it's just crazy. And he's trying to rebrand us with his fiction. But that rebranding is failing miserably. Look, for the white Christian nationalists he loves, he dropped the tagline, E pluribus unum. You know the phrase. It's on every dollar bill. It's on the Great Seal, and it means out of many one. Instead, what did he do? He pulled Jackie Robinson's biography from the libraries and military bases, his Department of Homeland Security. You know, they regularly post these like trading cards, these graphics of an all-white America, graphics full of racist dog whistles and anti-Semitic tropes. His vice president, J.D. Vance, wow. He went to the Turning Point USA conference and welcomed into the GOP Nazis, racists, and bigots of all types. He said, and I want to get the quote right, he said, when he was asked about, should we have, say, Nick Fuentes here, people like that, he said, we should not be doing something after Charlie Kirk's death that he refused to do in life. He invited all of us here. Right? All of them. That's that party. Last February, the Department of Education issued this Dear Colleague letter that required schools to stop teaching history, sociology, and anything that might refer to race or diversity, or equity. You know these topics. They ordered schools not to do anything that would provide an inclusive and safe environment for students of all backgrounds. They required states to certify compliance or face criminal penalties. This is who they are. But since then, because it's not who we are, the administration has lost scores of challenges to that order in court. And this week, the administration finally abandoned the effort. What was Donald Trump's response to his failure to bully schools into pretending we never had anybody but white people on this continent? Well, his response was to post the most disgusting racist video any president has ever put out there. And White House press secretary, that liar Carolyn Leavitt, denounced any criticism as fake outrage. Of course, the outrage isn't fake and it isn't going away. So Trump deleted the post and blamed it on a staffer who seems to have had control of his Truth Social account in the middle of the night. But then later he said it wasn't a mistake to post it. This is who he is. And according to the New York Times, the administration was taken by surprise that the video would strike a nerve. Really? Imagine that. They had no idea that posting a racist video would bother anyone. Out here in the real America, E pluribus unum survives his effort to rebrand us on Nazi lines. And you know what? Donald Trump has this relationship, you've all seen it, with Saudi Arabia. He is truly jealous of the Al Saud family. They managed to put their family name on an entire country. I mean, Arabia became Saudi Arabia on September 23rd, 1932. That's when a royal decree united two provinces on that peninsula, Hejaz and Najd, basically the area around Mecca and Jeddah with the area on Riyadh. Oh, how Donald wants to do that here. Look, he's already put his name on the Institute of Peace and the Kennedy Center. He says he should be on Mount Rushmore. He put his image on national park passes and replaced Martin Luther King Day with his own birthday as a free day to these parks. The government now issues Trump accounts to newborns. Foreigners can purchase Trump gold cards that fast track them for immigration. The Treasury Department is getting ready to release a Trump coin for our 250th birthday. The Navy announced a new Trump-class battleship. And this week we learned that Trump offered to release money he illegally withheld from a major infrastructure project linking New York and New Jersey if only Dulles Airport and Penn Station were renamed as Trump Airport and Trump Station. It didn't work, because we're not that. A judge ordered the money released, no name change required. I mean, if he has his way, we're going to go the way of Trump steaks and Trump University and Trump casinos. But he's not going to have his way. So he failed in that rebranding. And it won't take us long to erase his name from all of that. And there's a third strand to his rebranding that's as repulsive and dangerous as those other two. And that is this one. This is the one where he tries to brand ordinary Americans who stand up to him as domestic terrorists. Dangerous, dishonest, wrong. I mean, we learned this week that the U.S. attorneys in Minnesota actually began, of course they would have, an investigation into the ICE shooting of Renee Good. But that investigation was shut down by Kash Patel and Trump's team in Washington. That led, of course, to mass quitting in the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office. They smeared the other victim, Alex Preddy, too. And remember, when ICE came to Chicago and one of their officers shot Miramar Martinez 5 times, they did what they always do. They blamed her. They called her a terrorist. They charged her with crimes. Of course, those crimes didn't stand up. She's free. Charges are dropped. They haven't stopped. They haven't withdrawn their slanders, but the charges are dropped. But yesterday, she won a fight to force the government to release the text messages to and from the officer who pulled the trigger. We'll see those this week. Look, instead of succeeding in branding Americans as terrorists, the Trump administration has branded itself as loathsome. And more people are turning out because you know what? We don't see the folks who are turning out as terrorists. We see them as patriots. Yeah, he wants to rebrand us. I have a suggestion. It's a modest suggestion. If there's any honesty in branding, any at all, the slogan of this administration, of this second Trump term, ought to be hitting new lows each and every day. That captures both his governing, his domestic policy, what he's doing in the world, his foreign policy, is increasingly brazen corruption. And the fun part is it also captures his poll numbers. So stay strong, show up, make noise, do not comply, and we will get through all of this. All of it. I'm going to talk about these things and more with a fabulous slate of guests on this show today, starting with the really remarkable David Rothkopf when we come back from a quick break. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. I am hoping for a fabulous guest, as I told you before the break, but we are having trouble connecting, and I have reached out to the producers to ask them to see if they can do something about it. But in the meantime, let's us talk. I'm going to open the phone lines at 773-763-9278. I usually do this at the end of the show, but maybe if I do it now at the beginning, I'll hear from some new voices. And I'm really interested in your thoughts on today's news, on what you see in Minneapolis, on the incredible corruption that we keep learning about in this administration. I mean, oh my God, what terrible stuff. But also about the ways Americans are fighting back, the ways you are fighting back, the courage that people are showing every day. So I would love it if you'd call 773-763-9278 and tell me, what you're doing and what you think others can do to help push back, or if you want just to vent a little bit about the crazies that seem to have taken over at least the executive branch. But we could talk about that. We could talk about the cryptocurrency money that Trump is, Binance and the monies that Trump has gotten. We could talk about how Kash Patel and the Trump administration stopped the investigation into Renee Good's killing. We could talk about this hideous Truth Social post that Trump claimed was a fake, but turns out is real, and now he said he owns and he didn't do anything wrong. Disgusting, really disgusting. Given a chance to apologize for it, he did not, which of course is right. And we can even talk about foreign policy if you want, about the crushing way he's wrecking what took a world war and lots of American leadership to build up, which is a world order that has been phenomenally good, not just for Americans, but for everyone on the planet for a long time. And if those aren't enough topics, Bobby Kennedy, we now know, told Congress he was going to Samoa, for fun. And it turns out he went there in order to spread lies about vaccines, even though he told Congress he absolutely wasn't going to talk about vaccines there. So I think those are some pretty good topics at 773-763-9278 if you want to join me in this conversation. Jim, you want to start us off?
Hi, Edwin. Yeah, I think last weekend to me was a high watermark for the Democrats. I got a feeling that it's just going to go downhill for the Republicans from here on out, and this is another perfect example of it. But the accumulation of poor Americans had to die as a result of this, and most of these people in custody. I think 80% don't have any, never did anything against the law. Maybe 10% have got library cards out of whack. But I think the American public is definitely awoken to this insanity, and I think they're going downhill. What do you think, Edwin? I think the Republican Party is going downhill from it.
Yeah, I was worried at the beginning when you said it was the Democrats' high watermark. I think we haven't come anywhere near our high. It's the Republicans' high watermark for sure. They're going down, we're going up. You know why? And I think you're absolutely right. And it isn't really about Democrats or about the Democratic brand, because we are past that. Americans have just decided that it is all of us against MAGA, that the Republican Party, the one they knew, it just doesn't exist. What we have is a MAGA party, and Americans don't like what they see. They don't like the racism. They don't like the violence. They don't like the coercion. They don't like the corruption. They don't like the braggadocio. They don't like seeing Trump's name on absolutely everything. I mean, I think Americans are like, you promised us you'd lower grocery prices, and instead you lined your own pocket.
Yeah, but
by the way, and shot us for complaining.
No, I know, and not only that, but he's intimidating the voters. He hasn't made a real stance about lighting up the polling places with machine guns, with people with machine guns, like you were back in with Idi Amin's administration in Africa.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what. But I mean, I don't see any Republicans denouncing that rhetoric. I mean, they have to live. Their kids have to live in this country too. And they have to come to the conclusion that fair elections are the survival of any country. I mean, 3/4 of the country is falling under authoritarian rule now. What appeal to that is, I have no idea. When you abandon your reason for authority, that is, to me, is the worst sin you can make. I mean, I don't care who the authority is. I'm not going to abandon my reason at any time soon. But this idea that we're going to sit around in polling places and make it difficult for people to vote I mean, you can only do that. How long can you do that? You might do it one election cycle or two, but sooner or later, you can't this can't succeed. This Project 2025 can't succeed because it's not doing anything for any average American, Edwin.
Jim, you've noticed that? It's making our lives worse. We are less economically well off. We are less safe in the world. We are less healthy. And you know who's really been screwed by this guy? Really screwed. I mean, well, the list is long. I mean, if you aren't white, he's hunting you down. If you're black, he's trying to make sure you can't be employed. But my God, his base, rural America, is being massacred by this man. I mean, the people who represent agriculture are begging in Congress. You know, they had record profits when Biden was president, and now they have record numbers of bankruptcies among farms. They are. They argue that we're going to have an agriculture collapse because of that.
What about the job report on Friday? They finally got one that got some action, and it seemed to be, some sense of reality, and it was the largest job loss since the Great Recession. Who was the worst president until this guy came out? This guy made him, push. But that's the worst job report since 2007, 2008.
Yeah. Well, the last time right. Yep. Yeah, go ahead. We need to hold them accountable. I mean, the last time in 2008, we held no bankers accountable for what happened. We are going to hold Trump and his cronies accountable. When we sweep them away, no matter how many people he thinks he's pardoning, we will find a way to hold them accountable. We will find a way to scrape back the money they stole from us.
We have to. But look at the courts. They're exhausted. The girl up in Minnesota had to relent and say, put me in jail. I can't take this anymore. Look what he's done to the courts.
Well, the courts, that was a bad headline, Jim. That was a bad headline because she isn't the courts. She works for the Trump administration. She said, look, I work for them, and they won't do what they have to do by law. Like, I'm exhausted trying to get my clients, the government of the United States, to follow the law. The courts are actually doing their job. No judge has said, I'm sorry, I'm too overworked to hold you accountable. All over the country, they are saying, you can't say you are too busy to obey the Constitution. You can't say you're too busy arresting people to arrest them constitutionally. You do not get this power. You have enormous power in DHS, in Homeland Security, but that power has to be exercised within a constitutional framework. So I'm proud of it. You know what? I'm proud of it.
Yeah. And also, I would say that the silver lining in all this insanity is that when we got to examine a lot of things. I think healthcare has to be addressed, and minimum wage has to be addressed. The things that if Franklin Delano Roosevelt was alive today would be looking at very copiously, because we have to do what he did, which is to pay attention to regular Americans and make their lives better. Yep. Exactly. Thanks for taking my call. All right, Jim. Thank you. Thank you. David, thank you for calling. Thank you for being part of this and bailing me out when my guest isn't showing up.
Oh, no problem, Edward. Yeah, we've got a beautiful day out here, but you're probably getting on the nippy side out there. So,
well, tell me, when you say out here, do you mean in San Francisco?
Yeah. I don't know, it may not be 60, but it's sure pleasant. And I've been warning people for 10 years now that Donald Trump is a currency speculator. And have you ever read Naomi Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine?
I have not.
Well, it was written ostensibly about the Katrina hurricane aftermath, and how the adherents of George Bush were intending to make things worse so they could buy everything up cheap. And when you look at currency speculators, they do the same thing. So the old technique that Naomi Klein was warning us about, and she gave just one example about Katrina, it's a technique that's been used basically for thousands of years. you praise the country for a while, and then you curse it. You praise it, you curse it. And you try to bounce their currency, and that ruins people who live in the real world. You know, so farmers are a good example. People that work in mining, people that work in a variety of different situations where they deal with tangible products. And when the prices go crazy high, it changes everything so much that stability can't be left, can't exist. And so,
David, I'm honestly, I'm having trouble hearing you. It's not coming through very clearly. Either you have to speak more clearly into your phone, or I'm afraid I'm going to have to move on because it's very hard to understand what you're telling me.
let's see, is that any better?
No, it's not. You know what? Call back in and we'll see if we get a better connection. Meanwhile, I'm going to move on to Steve on the Gold Coast. Steve. Okay. Okay. No, Steve. How about Paul? Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay.
And by the way, David, that number is 773-763-9278. Okay, Paul.
773-763 WCPT. I remember. Well, I want to ask you about a strategy that I've been thinking of, and I've also called my representatives in Congress. The legislative staffers seem to think it was interesting. I don't know how serious they were, but here's my idea for funding ICE that the Democrats should bring to the table. And that would be this. They're willing to fund ICE 30 days at a time, pending the review of all ICE agents hired in 2025 since Trump took office. Because I think that what we know is, number one, many of them either have not completed proper training or don't have adequate proper credentials. Secondly, many of them have criminal records, news reports say. And thirdly, many of them, I'm almost certain, do not even have a completed application package. If you've seen that article, and Joan had on the other day, Slate writer, Slate journalist Laura Jadid, Jedeed, she's on Slate.com, wrote an article about how she applied to ICE just to see what it was like.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Hang on. You called in and at the end of my show 3 weeks ago, and we talked about this because Laura was one of my guests talking about that experience.
Yeah, that's right. And Joan had her on, and then I thought, wait a minute. She's not the only one, and that is a legitimate way for Democrats to pursue. I mean, look, we don't want to get stuck with we want to defund the police label, but this is just good old-fashioned, government bureaucracy. We got to know what we're paying for. This is kind of like.
But I'm not even gonna. I don't even think we need to be defensive about defund the police. You know what? We could say defund ICE, defund them entirely. They're completely corrupt. Take half of that money and rebuild a border patrol that isn't corrupt, and the other half of the money, give it to police departments around the country so that they can upgrade all of their technology in return for giving back some of the military weapons that they're using on our streets. So let's take down the militarization of American streets. We can invest more in police, and we can invest in an honest border patrol and defund these terrible thugs who are trying to terrorize ordinary Americans. Paul, I am not in the least bit worried about them trying to slap a defund the police label on us. You go ahead. I mean, can you imagine this conversation? They say, you want to defund the police. And I'm saying, I'm sorry. What police, where do you live? And do the police show up in your streets in camo and masks and shoot citizens and have the attorney generals of the United States say, we're not going to look into the shooting? Is that your idea of policing? That's my idea of something that needs to be defunded. Yeah.
Right. Okay, but look at the political opportunity here. As each 30-day period goes on, and thousands of these thugs are dismissed from the agency, and I would also add that any of them who did not have a legitimate application are not legitimately employed, claw their money, their their salary and their benefits and all the stuff they got clawed that back. And you see that these month after month, like 9 months, this will take us up to the end of the fiscal year, and you'll see it's a political opportunity to say this was a completely delegitimized opportunity. And these guys will start quitting once they see that, they just fired, 10,000 last month, and they're going to come to me. They're going to quit. And then you just say, well, apparently we don't really need all this money to do this. Yeah. And you see that it shows the American people that this was a big ruse and a violent one.
Yeah, it was all, yes, totally huge. Yeah. And so you know what? And it's all because we have an administration that is hostile to democracy and hostile to the American ideals of pluralism, hostile to at least half of the human beings who live here. It's just disgraceful. And you know what? I mean, they don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore, and Americans have made up their mind. He's got to go. And you know what? I don't think we're going to have to wait 3 years. He's going to get thrown out of office before then, either by his own team or by impeachment. He isn't going to make it. Thank you, Paul, as always. Really appreciate it. Hey, Joan Esposito is joining me. Hello, Joan.
Hey, Edwin, how are you?
You know what? I'm good. I'm actually good. I hear you had I actually caught some of it, a very good debate with Democratic candidates for senator.
It was, my goal was to try to have something said that they haven't said before. And I thought, it's really hard, as you know, to get a politician who's running for office to veer from the script. But I thought we did a pretty good job. I thought it was really interesting. And as I said at the end of it, we have an embarrassment of riches in Illinois. We have so many good people who are competing in this upcoming Democratic primary. And I think that Robin Kelly, Juliana Stratton, Raja Krishnamurthy, they would all be good senators. They would be very different. But I thought it was really interesting because Juliana came out hard and fast, and most of what she was coming out with was directed at Raja. And, he did this and he did that. And I thought it was clearly she was trying to make her mark and go on the offensive. And it was kind of interesting. Robin Kelly kind of sat back there and just kind of let the two of them, go at it for a while. She was kind of, you know what? Until they start coming after me, I'm just going to play it cool. I thought it was very interesting.
Let me ask you something that I wonder about. For all of the Democratic candidates who are going to win, I think we are certainly going to win the House. We might even win the Senate because of the crimes of the current administration. And Americans have made up their mind that nothing has happened in this year that's good for us, while these guys have lined their pockets up and down. I think people are sick of it. So the next crowd of Democrats that we elect, they're going to be in a position that very few Congresses have ever been in, where Donald Trump has truly destroyed the federal bureaucracy. He's destroyed our global relations. He's taken down the order that the world has functioned under, the rules-based order that's been there for 60 years. It will be up to the next Congress to reinvent the world. It'll be up to them to rethink how our democracy works, because we have to protect ourselves from ever having to go through anything like this again. And we have to figure out how America, what our place in the world is, how we're going to build a government in the ruins of what he's left that's better than the one we had before, not just go backwards. Did anybody talk about that opportunity and how they see us moving forward?
We didn't really hit on that. Man, we had 70 minutes and it flew by. But I will tell you, I agree with you. And I know we've gone through a lot of trauma and our government has been decimated. But the silver lining is we can take a look at these agencies, what worked, what didn't, and maybe rebuild them better, maybe rebuild them different. About 8 months ago, I heard Mike Cabanargi speak, and under Biden, he was head of, was he regional HUD? Or I can't remember what, no, it wasn't HUD. He was a regional federal director. And he said that, kind of, if you're looking for a silver lining, we should be able to rebuild these agencies better. Like he gave the example of, Biden wanted to bring down the cost of drugs. And he said, there were the first 8 drugs, we got it done. But he said, because of we made an offer to the corporations, they had so many weeks to reply. Then we went back, then we went forth, and then there was public comment. He said to lower the price of 8 drugs took 15 months. And to the point where when they came out with the second tranche of 8 drugs, Trump had already been elected, and there was no way those negotiations were going to continue. And he said, it was a great idea, but it shouldn't have taken 15 months. We can do better.
It does. We can do better. But it's not, Joan, I was in government.
What you're saying is exactly right.
It does not take that much time. It takes knowing how to use power. And Democrats sometimes haven't understood that. We have to know how to use power, and we have to use it well. But there are things like I don't want to fix Homeland Security. Homeland Security was created after 9/11. And I think now
it has served its purpose.
Well, I think it was a mistake. I think we should say, we thought what we were doing was mitigating the risks by consolidating all of this so we could better protect America. But we never imagined one of those risks would come from the White House. So when we created it, we created this oppressive tool that has allowed them to surveil Americans everywhere now. They know where we drive. They have those license readers out. Certainly in Minneapolis now, they watch your face, they watch your driver's license, they know where you are, and they are aggressively prosecuting people. I think I want to hear Democrats say what we've been through with Donald Trump is appalling and terrible. We need one track that's going to hold them accountable. Really is. But on the other, and then that should go to work. But as a legislator, that's not my job. As a legislator, what I have to focus on is building a better world. So if that means revisiting the decisions we made when we created Homeland Security, let's do that. I think it certainly means Biden began his term with what do we do about the Supreme Court Commission? They had a lot of good ideas. It's time to pick them and do them, because the Supreme Court is part of the problem. And I want my candidates to be brave enough to talk about those big changes that we have to make that will then refocus that will restore a democracy so that it works for people. And when that happens, we have better outcomes for people, that we start to see, corporations can't just combine and raise prices. We actually take those combinations apart. So they have to compete. So prices come down for all of us. These are not crazy things. We know how to do them. No. We just haven't had the courage to do them. And Democrats have to, Americans want us to do that. Yeah.
Part of that, I think, is we have seen so many Democrats who, we're going to do it this way because this is how we've always done it. It's a new world. The ways we've always done it are not going to work in the world we have today. We've got to come up with a new, tougher, bolder approach. It's like we're so afraid, we can't do that. It might get struck down in the courts. Well, let it. Try it. See what happens.
Absolutely right. So this is why I ask you, and again, now that we've had this conversation, did any of those 3 candidates talk about doing any of those things?
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
but in their defense,
I think they're smart, they're talented.
That's not something that we asked them.
Yeah, but they should have put it out there anyway. I think people are painting between the lines.
The closest, and because she said that basically she was going to oppose Trump every chance, not vote for any appointees, vote for any bills. I mean, she was just going to vote no. So that was about as close as we got to.
Yeah, okay, but she's running for a 6-year term, and he isn't going to be there for 6 years. So that doesn't tell me what's going to happen. Yeah, right. So I'm just like, I know all three of them. I respect all three of them. But I am very eager to push Democrats, my party, to have the courage to meet the moment. And painting between the lines isn't it.
Right. I agree with you 1,000%.
Oh, Joan, if I were younger, I'd be back there doing it myself.
And if I were younger, I'd be out there campaigning for you.
So that was, but you had them out there, and that was pretty amazing, actually. And good for, I think, journalism, that we are still able to put candidates out there and have forums like this. Most of the forums now are run by, very good, but interest groups. So they invite the candidates in for their forums in their particular group. And usually by the time, certainly this is true in a local election, and Chicago's not unique, and this happens all over the country. By the time candidates show up, to talk to journalists, they've already made so many promises at a variety of forums run by groups with very important interests, but they're special interests, that they don't have the freedom to talk about big picture what needs to be done in their jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So having journalists in the front doing what you did, really important.
Well, thank you. It was interesting. I think we had a lot of fun. I think it was really, it was eye-opening for me. And it was also fun because, I've talked to all these people on the radio, and I didn't realize that, like Raja came up to me, he goes, "It's so nice to meet you in person." And I was like, I feel like we must have already met in person. We've talked so many times. But it was great.
All right. Now let me ask you about something that is less great. Are you planning on seeing the Melania movie?
Actually, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm not planning on seeing the Melania movie. I've read quite a bit about the Melania movie, and I sort of feel like I've already seen it, even though I haven't.
Yeah.
And the more
that's
the
the money.
The loss Jeff Bezos takes on this, the better.
Right. That's the money that could have saved the Washington Post. Yeah.
Oh, no. Please, he could have saved the Washington Post with pocket change.
But he doesn't want to, so.
Right.
You can't rely on billionaires to bail you out. That's just not a strategy in a democracy. It's just not. And for a long time, I know reporters, when the industry was in trouble, said, "Isn't there a patriotic billionaire who will bail us out?" And we're happy when he first came there. And we saw some of that in Chicago. It's not helpful.
I think that what he's done purposely because he really wants Trump to buy his space rockets. And yet he still had those same space rockets when he bought the Washington Post. And I mean, he was like, "We're going to make this a world-class paper. We're going to have bureaus all around the world." Democracy dies in darkness, keeping a record of how many lies Trump tells. Something very strange happened to Jeff Bezos. And I say it's because he wants Trump to buy his rockets, and I'm sure that's true. But this guy has more money than he could ever spend until the day he dies. And what he's doing, I wish he would sell the Washington Post to his ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, because I think she would be a good steward for that paper.
He's had a lot of offers that people have tried to. A lot of people have tried to buy it, and they've been rebuffed. He doesn't want to sell it. Because writing fawning editorials is worth something for him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Joan, we learned this week. I just want to get your take on this too. Donald Trump was illegally holding money back for this massive tunnel project that connects New York and New Jersey. He was holding all that money back, and he said, "I'll give you the money like it was his to give, right? If you name Dulles Airport Trump Airport, if you name Penn Station Trump Station. And then, of course, the nice judges in the court said, no, you have to give them the money anyway because it's appropriated by Congress and it's not really yours to use for extortion. So they got the money anyway. But, like, what do you think Americans think when they hear stories like that?
I think anybody who's reasonable sees that as further evidence of a person who is untethered to reality and out of touch. I personally think, Edwin, why is he going to so much trouble to get his name everywhere? I think it's because his health is far worse than they have let on. And this is a guy who knows his days on this planet are limited, and he is terrified that he will be forgotten and that he will have no legacy. I think that is what is behind this frantic effort to slap his name on everything. I think it is a reflection of how ill he is.
You know what? It's been 200 and some years, and the name Benedict Arnold still carries some cachet. And I mean, people still remember the traitor that was Benedict Arnold. And 200 years from now, people will still remember the traitor that Donald Trump is, the mastermind of January 6th, the guy who tried to undermine American elections, the guy who lined his own pockets. His legacy is cemented in history. Yes. He surely doesn't have to worry about that. Slapping his names on a few monuments, names that we will, scratch off with our fingernails if we need to the moment we get the chance, isn't going to change any of that.
Did you see what, after he put his name on the Kennedy Center, Kerry Kennedy posted on social media that the second he's out of office, she's going over there with a ladder, and she is going to personally take his name off the building. And she said, when I do it, if any of you want to join me, you're welcome to, but I'm making you a promise. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And the Institute of Peace, and, we'll melt down all the Trump coins, and we'll... I know,
I really do think, though, I think this effort to have his name everywhere, I think he's terrified. He's got so many sycophants around him. I don't know that what you said about how he'll be remembered as the worst president in history, I don't know if that's actually part of his thought process, but I think he is terrified of being forgotten, of not having a legacy.
Well, I hope to be able to forget him. I'd like to have him be in the history books. I don't want to think about him every day. It's enormously debilitating, the amount of energy America spent. When this man just has craved attention, you and I have lived long and interesting lives. But if you're a young American, this man has been the center of attention for the last 12 years or so. I mean, he got more attention when Biden was president than Biden did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how can you imagine being young and having it be just Donald Trump 24/7 for your whole life?
No, I can't. And, I don't know how you feel about this. I really think that our generation failed this younger generation. It's like everything has gone to hell under our watch. And, I don't know what we could have done differently. Whether it was just a death of 1,000 cuts and we didn't see the big picture till too late. But I really feel responsible for this world we are handing over to a younger generation. And I want to apologize right now to everybody.
Okay. I disagree with you, Joan. I do. First, a number of us have been warning for decades that this, where the embrace of every bigot in the country and the Republican Party was taking us.
But we didn't
talked about it.
We didn't figure out how to stop it.
Yeah, hang on.
All right.
Right now, because people had other things to do, because life was good, because people are entitled to live their lives in a democracy, because it was affording people that chance. They didn't pay attention to politics. They assumed the founders got it right, and mostly they did, but not entirely, and that it would be stable. But now that it's in jeopardy, people are showing up. And you go to those rallies, I go to those rallies, you know what? It isn't overwhelmingly the young people whose future is going to be at stake who are at those rallies. It's overwhelmingly older people who are out there, and now it's starting to be everybody. But that first No Kings rally, that second No Kings rally, there were some young people, but it was mostly older people. And now it's everybody. And it is a great time to be alive because what you do matters, and people are doing wonderful things to slow down this erosion of our democracy, and to say when we rebuild it, we're going to rebuild it on different lines. I am convinced that after we get through this era, we will tear down Citizens United. We will say corporations are corporations. They're not people. Money isn't the same thing as speech. And a democracy means we all have the same vote. Jeff Bezos doesn't have the power that he has. I don't care if billionaires have billions of dollars. I really don't. But I do care that those billions of dollars buys them more worth in a democracy, more say in a democracy than a normal person who's working just as hard every day. I do. So we get to say to them, look, you want to keep your money, then your money has to have no outsized role in our politics. And if you insist that the money is going to play an outsized role in our politics, you know what, when we're going to take your money, then we're going to have marginal tax rates of 90% and a real death tax. And real corporate income taxes, because you can't have a democracy where a few people are able to buy their way in. I think we're going to get there, Joan. I think this is a fabulous time. We are being tested like we haven't been tested in a very long time. And every once in a while, countries like people need to be tested. And it's painful.
Well, I agree with you. I think we are going to come out of this better and stronger. I just don't know if I'm going to be alive to see it. I don't know how fast it's going to happen.
Joan, you are not going before the president. That is not happening.
I hope not.
That is not happening. No. Listen, I am so appreciative that you would spend some of your Saturday with me.
It's either this or do all the chores that I have lined up, and I would much rather talk to you.
Well, I said the rest of the day then is chore time. So thank you, though, John. I really appreciate it. It's always fun when we do this.
Love talking with you. Anytime, Edwin.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Listen, I am glad. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for sharing some of your time with me. My guest that was scheduled for here, really remarkable, David Rothkopf, has managed to send a text that says where he is, there's a power outage that has stopped him from being able to log in, because we were going to do this through a Zoom link, and he can't do it. So that explains why he was there. We'll reschedule, because I think you're going to want to hear from him. What an interesting man he is. But the rest of the show, we're going to spend time with two remarkable editors, really, one in Minnesota and one in Tennessee. You know what's going on in Minnesota. You can't believe what's going on in Tennessee, but we'll get more of a deep dive into that. And then I'm going to catch up with Bill Scher. I actually recorded that one yesterday, so that one is ready. He's, of course, political editor at the Washington Monthly. So much stuff to talk about, so much. I appreciate your calls. You know what? I'll take your calls again at the end of the show in case you were waiting while Joan and I were talking. Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Patrick Hooligan from the Minnesota Reformer joins me.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I'm joined by Patrick Hooligan. He's been here before. He's the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. He and his team, my gosh, they have really helped the country understand the truth about the federal operations in that state. They've also helped the people in that state understand not only what's happening to them, but what resources they themselves have brought to this fight. Patrick, welcome back.
Always a pleasure.
Since you and I last spoke, and that was only, 3 weeks ago, so much has changed. I mean, two murders at the hand of federal agents, the government announcing it's backing off, but I think that's a lie. I mean, I forget what I think. What's the current state of affairs on the ground where you are?
Well, I think there was a little bit of optimism because of the supposed drawdown of 700 officers. That is nearly a quarter, and some belief that the current director of the operation, Homan, is kind of less of a cowboy than Gregory Bovino, and less interested in the kind of street operations that have led to so many routine violations of constitutional rights.
Yeah, I mean,
but I also want to let me just add, though. I mean, despite the hints of optimism, the fact is that there's so many kids who are afraid to go to school. And their parents are afraid to go to work. And so this is really, I think we're beginning to see the long-term damage this is going to have on kids and also the local economy.
Well, I actually wanted to ask you about that, about the impact of prolonged occupation. Talk more about the economic side of that. I know, for instance, in Chicago, whole neighborhoods lost months of income.
Right. We're seeing that where we have a high proportion of immigrants, businesses, significant parts of East St. Paul and South Minneapolis. And of course, we feel terrible for the folks who are losing their businesses. It also really is destroying what had given the Twin Cities a lot of vibrancy since we started receiving Hmong refugees in the 1980s and 90s, and Somali refugees in the 90s. And so it's going to leave the city a changed place. We also don't really have, I mean, I was thinking about this compared to the pandemic, where you had really significant federal and state resources to help struggling businesses. Those resources aren't there. We have the federal government is, of course, hostile, and state government's fiscal situation has changed markedly since in the last few years. And it's also, we have a divided Minnesota House. It's going to be very difficult to get state resources to these businesses that have suffered. And these are small businesses, of course. I mean, they have, restaurants. There's a Somali mall called Carmel Mall that's, kind of a famous, not just as a mall, but also as a gathering place, and just devastated by what's happened.
So economically, it's taking a toll that's going to matter to the state. Emotionally, what does it do to everyone to have this on your streets every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're sheltering in place, or if you're a kid who can't go to school, I mean, I think we know also from the pandemic that this kind of isolation is very damaging. I do think that there's also a sense of belonging and togetherness and resiliency that's come out of this, and certainly we've seen that in the massive demonstrations, and there is a huge mutual aid network operating to help people, and I think that's certainly drawn a lot of Minnesotans closer together. I'm not from here, and I've never been one of the, there's a certain kind of Minnesota, I call it Minnesota jingoism, but they call it Minnesota exceptionalism. That's never been something I subscribe to until recently. I've become much more Minnesotan, if you will.
Well, I want to ask about that because that gets at the politics. I mean, does a prolonged occupation, I mean, I think about the ones around the world, does it lead to resignation or radicalization or to a deeper understanding about what democracy is about? I mean, what is what is it doing to sort of, not party politics, but the idea of politics to have this occupation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's engaged a lot of people who are otherwise, they might have been. We had the highest voter turnout in the country, so they might have been regular voters, but they were not the kinds of people who were going to be following ICE vehicles around and calling them into the dispatcher. And so that's what's kind of grating when I hear this bit about paid protesters. And sure, there are there's progressive nonprofits, of course, and they're very engaged in this, and labor unions, but it's a lot of people who are just regular people and, have not really been engaged in this level of political activism ever. We had, there's a close-in suburb called Egan, and just a overflow crowd at the Tuesday night Democratic caucus. I mean, a lot of first-time caucus goers. People are really mad, and I think that's definitely going to show up in our politics.
Well, didn't you have an election a couple of weeks ago where somebody who was going to win anyway won with like 95% of the vote, some unheard of amount?
Yeah, I mean, put up Brezhnev numbers, if you will. It's St. Paul. It was never in doubt, but certainly, I think the state's politics have changed markedly, even just in the last 2 months.
Well, what are the Republicans in the state legislature? What's their reaction when they see this massive coming together in opposition? I won't say opposition to Republicanism because it's something different. Opposition to MAGA ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to really see cracks in that armor. I wrote a short piece this week about a letter that a state senator sent to the Holman of the Border Patrol, who's now sort of running things here. Pretty striking. He talked about I think he used the word countless detentions of legal residents and citizens. And I had the tone of the letter was sort of like very sharp and striking, mixed with Minnesota nice. But it was definitely, it seemed to me important that a swing seat Republican senator had come out so strongly against the current ICE tactics and strategy. And he's not the first either. We've seen this from a few other swing state Republicans who are calling for they call it a tactical pause or what have you. And to me, that indicates that they know where their constituents are. And recent polling shows that people are fed up with this, with the tactics that ICE is using.
Yeah, I mean, and not just ICE. I mean, the Justice Department is complicit. I guess we now know Kash Patel and the FBI, the Justice Department, they're in it, ordered an investigation into Renee Good's killing to be quashed. And that's why all those U.S. attorneys in your state quit. What's the reaction to that? And what does it mean, by the way, for the fight against crime? Those U.S. attorneys actually had an important day job.
That's right. The New York Times has a significant story out, I think just today, and you mentioned that after the Renee Good killing, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota geared up to do what they, a standard civil rights investigation, and that included a warrant on Renee Good's car so they could get blood samples and so forth. And they stepped on that, and then they were recommending that the investigation go in a very different direction, essentially of Renee Good and her partner, and any activist ties they had. So that, amongst other things, has certainly cleared out the U.S. Attorney's Office. They've lost, I think, a dozen or more. We also learned today that the chief counsel for ICE here locally has retired. He doesn't want any part of it. We are seeing hundreds of habeas corpus cases that have been filed in federal court. And the government is so overwhelmed that they're not responding to judicial orders. And so we've gotten some really sharply worded rulings from federal judges here, including folks who were, one of them is the Scalia's clerk. He's a very conservative guy. And he has written some blistering decisions saying, like, why are you ignoring these orders? And he attached an appendix to one of his orders that had, I think it was 80 or 90
97
court. Yeah, there you go. Court orders that had been that not been followed, and then of course earlier this week we had she was apparently a temporary appointment to the U.S. Attorney's Office. She normally works for Homeland Security. She's an attorney. She's in this hearing and getting a bit of a dressing down from the judge, who says, what is the deal here? Article 3 gives us this authority. We've ordered this. We can't get response. And she kind of has essentially a nervous breakdown in the courtroom and says, oh, this job sucks. And
I saw that.
Could you please find me in contempt so I can get some sleep? But the entire proceeding, I read the transcript the other night, and
Me too. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Because the judge is saying, in effect, I don't care how overwhelmed, you cannot say I'm too busy breaking the law to follow the law. That's really what he's saying. You have a lot of power. You can't just be so busy breaking the law that you can't be bothered to be told to paint within constitutional lines.
Right, and as he points out, I mean, it's a very serious issue because there are people who, in the judiciary's determination, have been held unjustly. I mean, this is the greatest power that government has to detain you, to take away someone's freedom. And in the judge's mind, it was done unjustly. And now when he is trying to get this person free, his order is ignored.
Yeah, so much for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They take your liberty.
Yeah, it's astounding, yeah. And it's also, the so-called law and order crowd or, rule of law, it's paying no attention to that in these cases, apparently.
I don't understand that. I don't understand it at all. I just don't. I can't. I mean, maybe I ran against a member of my own party for governor when he was a crook. He won, but I'm here talking to you, and he went to jail. I mean, I just don't understand politicians in particular who are willing to turn a blind eye to injustice, law breaking, corruption. It never works out well for them. Americans aren't going to put up with it. Minnesotans aren't going to put up with it.
I think Minnesotans are not going to put up with it, but I don't know. There's a long history of tyrants.
Not so much here, but yes. No question. Yeah. No question. Well, speaking of abuse, was there any follow-up? If there was, I didn't see it, to the public meeting where Ilhan Omar was giving a talk and somebody rushed up and sprayed her with some kind of fluid. That was scary. What was that about?
Unclear. I mean, the guy seems to have been radicalized online, like so many others, and had a lot of right-wing online activity. And apple cider vinegar. I don't know what the point was, but again, everybody seems to be having a nervous breakdown here, and so luckily he was subdued. And my favorite part of that incident was where Ilhan kind of cocks her fist back like she's going to throw one, and she wasn't able to get the opportunity because he'd been subdued. But it kind of shows you how tough she is.
And you guys also had, wasn't it an activist from Minnesota who was arrested, and then Donald Trump posted an image of her crying, even though she never did?
Yes, a well-known civil rights activist, and she had been with the protesters who went into a church, whose pastor is a senior ICE person here, and so they arrested her. There's kind of an obscure law, which I think is to protect abortion clinics from interruption, but I guess also applies to churches. And so they arrested her, and then the White House sent out this meme where they doctored the photo of her arrest to show her crying and, looking kind of pathetic. And, we talked to some legal ethics folks who said this actually endangers the prosecution because you're not allowed to share prejudicial information that could sway the jury. And, there's some leeway there, but not like that. And
I don't think they care about actually getting a conviction. They care about
that's probably it. Yeah,
see the picture. Yeah. I guess I know a lot of your state is Republican and feels and has very negative feelings about the Democratic brand. That's just true in every state, and Minnesota is not an exception to that. But it seems right now that that Republicans who are counting on that to keep them in office have got to be terrified.
Yeah, I mean, they also earlier in January, they thought they were going to be running against Tim Walz, who was running for a third term. He seemed kind of hobbled by the actual incidents as well as the wildly exaggerated incidents of fraud in our safety net programs. And I think voters are hesitant to grant a third term. But he dropped out of the race, and Minnesota's most popular politician is running for governor instead. That's Amy Klobuchar. So she's going to be at the top of the ticket. She's the party's best vote getter. And then you've got a lot of
Mike Lindell, the pillow guy.
Yeah, right. He's running. We had a good story this week about how he spent most of his campaign contributions buying his own memoir, which he then gives out to people, I guess. So it just looks like a total grift. But anyway, I think I talked to a Republican lobbyist recently. He told me he's already planning for a Democratic trifecta because the politics of this ICE occupation have gone so badly for local Republicans.
Yeah, you're a journalist. I'm not. So I'm going to say amen to that. How did J.D. Vance's visit go?
Well, pretty terribly. I mean, especially in retrospect, he did, what he does. He insulted everyone, but except his far right allies, and he's gonna, he was gonna try to help turn down the temperature. He said, and then 3 days later, Alex Preddy was murdered or killed, I should say. We don't know. So whatever he said or did was obviously ineffective because that was, just cowboy behavior on their part. And, he really has the sort of far right politics of Trump without whatever the strange Trump charisma is. And so I think, that's 2028. I think he's certainly the front runner.
Yeah, well, he got roundly booed at the Olympics, the opening stuff yesterday. So the whole world.
I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to go back to all of this. So you've sort of described a Democratic wave coming, even though it's not really. It's not really. There's nobody yet saying, here's what we'll do as Democrats. I mean, Amy Klobuchar is certainly capable of that, but she hasn't done it yet because she hasn't really campaigned yet. So this is happening mostly as a reaction against what people are seeing and feeling and being threatened by on their streets. And I'm just, but what you're not describing is a population that's been radicalized by this occupation, as happens, we see all over the world when places, they become more determined to restore rights taken, I guess, than to overturn an order. I think that's an incredibly positive message in what we see there.
Yeah. And also a kind of communitarian politics. The whole thing has been kind of based on taking care of your neighbor. And let me just say, I think it probably has radicalized a lot of people. I just, I'm not sure that we know what that looks like in the context of party politics. Most anti-authoritarian movements do not spring out of political parties. Right. And I think that, the movement here to resist, the Democratic Party is playing some role, but it's mostly incidental. And these are neighborhood networks. Yeah. And churches and labor unions and other civil society institutions. And I think the reason why they're having so much trouble, that is the feds, is because we have some of the highest social trust and strongest social fabric in the country. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but compared to other places, there's just strong familial and social networks here that go back generations. Yeah,
and those have been strengthened in this moment.
Exactly.
Because they've been tested and they've proven worthy. But nobody who opposes it has advocated violence. Nobody has shown up saying we need to arm and push them out. I mean, even when Governor Walz talked about the National Guard, the Minnesota National Guard, no one was contemplating a standoff with weapons.
No, we've had, smatterings of vandalism and kind of low-level violence, but certainly none of the federal officers have been seriously hurt. There was a finger bite or two, I think. But yeah, I think there's an understanding that that would only lead, that is, armed resistance would only lead to really significant repression, and you'd lose the moral high ground.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of self-discipline when they're on your streets.
It certainly does. It does.
The videos that have come out of your state are positively terrifying. That the last one I saw of somebody was in a car and they zoomed in front of her and then stopped made her stop and ordered her out, ran out of the car with all their weapons drawn, pointing at her and telling her to get out. It's just terrifying.
Yeah, that was down, I think, near Rochester. They frequently brandish their weapons, and it's not behavior that you see so much anymore from local police.
No,
and yet you're seeing this frequently. Yeah, when they're apprehending people.
So there was a little boy, a 5-year-old, who caught the hearts of everybody in the country. He was the one who was used as bait to get his dad, the guy in the bunny hat.
Liam.
Liam. And they were ordered returned. And now the government is doing their best to fast track their deportation. Again, what do people there think of that?
I think it's going to be very hard to turn Minnesotans against that 5-year-old boy. And, there's going to be the 30% of unreachables who are going to say that everybody here who's doesn't, frankly, probably isn't a citizen. There's even citizens that they want to deport. So, right. That's the thinking of a certain small subset of the population. But I think the vast majority of Minnesotans are going to be outraged if and when that occurs.
Right. I mean, Liam Conejo Ramos and his father won their case. They were ordered to be released and sent back home. I don't actually know if the government paid for their trip back home or not, but because they got sent to Texas. When I looked at a map, Texas and Minnesota are not neighbors, right? Right. But they got sent back, and now they're trying to fast track throwing them out of the country. That seems to be, designed to send a message that anybody who beats us in court, anybody who stands up to us, even if when they stand they're not even 5 feet tall, we will overwhelm you with force. And I just can't believe that the good people of America aren't going to make him, as I think we have with Renee Good and Alex Preddy, symbols of resistance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I think this issue, immigration broadly, went from being Trump's best issue to now being a real albatross now. And it's because of this behavior, I think, is just not in line with the long tradition of American civic values.
I got one last question for you, Patrick. How do you talk to your staff about staying safe?
We started on this last year. We bought a lot of equipment. We had a couple different safety
gas masks?
sessions. Exactly, yeah. And all kinds of other stuff. And it's something that we talk about all the time. Yep. And, and it's a learning experience. Like, at first we were keeping all of our gear in the office and then realized, like, these things have happened so quickly. Like, everybody needs to have a bag, basically almost like a go bag in their car.
Yeah.
With a mask and fresh filters, and, have the name of our lawyer written on their arm. And, don't have your Face ID on your phone, and all kinds of other, make sure your phone is charged up. And, there's the cold weather to deal with, too. So there's a lot of different factors. And luckily, we've been safe so far.
Journalism in Trump's America, everybody. Patrick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the work.
It's a pleasure, Eddie.
Thank you for the work.
Yep, anytime. Bye now.
All right, everybody, quick break, and then I'm back with another editor from the same news organization, but this time from Tennessee.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, that was amazing. And this is going to be two. Holly McCall, of course, you know her. She's the editor, award-winning editor, straight-talking editor of the Tennessee Lookout. And Holly, we haven't talked in a while, and I've missed our conversations.
Well, it has been a while, and it's good to talk to you. Happy newish year still?
Yeah. I was just talking in the last segment with a colleague of yours, Patrick Houlihan, who runs the state's newsroom organization in the Minnesota Reformer up there, about what they're going through. Terrifying.
Man, they have been doing the Lord's work over the last few months, haven't they?
Well, I asked him at the end what he tells his team, what they talk about and what they have to do to stay safe. And he just talked about, the gas masks they all carry around, that they don't go out without their lawyer's name written in markers on their arms and phone numbers and, all those things they have to do in Donald Trump's America in order to be the fourth estate. Terrifying.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I will be honest. We're going to talk about Tennessee, but I was sort of surprised, or I've been surprised, that we have not had at least one incident like a law enforcement shooting in Memphis, Tennessee, because Memphis is also where there is a federal law enforcement task force cited. The National Guard's been deployed there, and it's a majority minority city, the only one in Tennessee. And the law enforcement seems to be, they talk about how they're getting the worst of the worst. But in fact, they're not transparent at all. They're very opaque about what they're doing, about releasing statistics. They'll put statistics out, but with no way to independently verify. And mostly it looks like they're pulling over immigrants and people of color for traffic violations or alleged traffic violations. And I am certainly very glad it has not escalated to what's going on in Minnesota, which is, really horrifying and kind of unreal.
Yeah, we lived through some of that here in Chicago before they went up there.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. We learned a lot about how to organize resistance, and we learned a lot about how journalists can work together to cover this, and we did a good job, and then we went and taught the folks in Minnesota what we learned, and then they went and improved upon it like 100%, showing that Americans are learning from each other and getting better and better at standing up for what it means to be an American in this terrible time.
And that does give me hope when I see people, particularly on social media, posting things about how depressed they are and, I can't believe we're going through this and we're not going to survive. You know what? We do have 250 years of having a sort of an independent spirit. And we broke away from England 250 years ago. And I see what's going on in Minnesota and the people who continue to get out in the streets and protest. And we haven't seen this kind of protest, I'm not sure, maybe since Lyndon Johnson, the Vietnam era, if ever. But that gives me a little bit of hope to see that people are not just rolling over for it.
No, we are not rolling over. Not. Well, let's talk about what it means at the end. I'll come back to that. Before, I want to talk about what's going on in your state, because my gosh, your legislature baffles me. A couple of years ago, we were talking after a terrible school shooting, and they had a special session, and their response in that special session was like, gee, let's make it easier to have a gun. Like, okay.
Yeah.
That was so then now we're doing it with immigration there. Oh, I guess they started last year doing it with immigration there.
Well, they did. I often say that Tennessee we are so underestimated. When people think about Tennessee, they like to think about Dolly Parton and music. And, in fact, I would say, lead the country in atrocious legislation from an equally atrocious legislature. And we just don't get enough credit for how terrible we are.
Well, I'm going to give you a chance to give yourself credit right here.
Yes, please. Let me pat ourselves on the back for being so ignorant. So, last year, as you mentioned, we did start out the year. Governor Bill Lee, who I was thinking about this before we got on, he clearly wants something. This is the last year of his 2 years. He's got 2 terms in office. This is the final year, and he's clearly angling for something else. I don't know what that is. I don't know if he wants to be a U.S. senator. I don't know if he's still hoping to be appointed to something in the Trump administration. But at any rate, last year he held a special legislative session that was directed primarily towards 2 issues: private school vouchers, which is a show in and of itself, and immigration. And during that session, they set up an entirely new department, a centralized enforcement bureau. And, we also had a number of bills last year. There was one that would have purported to challenge Plyler v. Doe. That is the Supreme Court ruling that says
before we get to that, before you go there, go back to this immigration enforcement unit. Because I think you told me they didn't just create the unit, but they created it exempt from public records laws.
Well, that's correct. It is exempt from public records law, and we, of course, had a number of conversations with, there's a great organization in Tennessee called the Tennessee Coalition for Open Government. We had a conversation with them about how do we get around this. And while this department is exempt, the other departments they communicate with, for instance, the Tennessee Department of Transportation, the Department of Human Services, those are not exempt. And so we try to get records by doing an end run.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they created with this department, of course, a new immigration czar, and I couldn't tell you anything about him. Kids can really barely remember his name. He flies so below the radar. But there was a bill that last year that was, I thought, really bad that I was going to mention. It purported to challenge Plyler v. Doe, which is the Supreme Court decision ruling that says every child is entitled to a public education, even a child whose parents have come here without going through all the necessary immigration channels. And so it's a blatantly unconstitutional bill. It did fail. It passed in the House, which some people say here is the frat house, and in the Senate it failed, which we call that the country club. So you've got country club at one end of the hall and frat house at the other. But that, by the way, is one of the bills that looks like it's going to come back up this year. I mean, and there's so much the hypocrisy around that. It's just it makes my head want to explode. So the reason that it failed last year is because there were questions about whether or not the state would lose federal education funding. Now, take this apart. These are the same people who want the Department of Education to go away. And as I wrote in a column a couple of weeks ago, they're also the same lawmakers who like to say we don't need federal funding. We do things the Tennessee way. But yet they don't want to lose this funding from the department they want to go away. And by the way, Tennessee's budget, 40% of the state budget comes from the federal government. So I like to tell people I'm on the hypocrisy beat, but this one is even hard for me to wrap my head around.
Well, I guess, if they manage to get a case in court, this Supreme Court will likely take it up, and who knows what they'll do. They may. Well, it just is a matter of policy. It's a matter of policy. The idea that you would have kids, this has nothing to do with immigration. The immigration, you got to deal with immigration straight. But once you have kids in your community, to say you're going to leave them uneducated, or just wandering around the streets, I guess, while their parents try and work during the days, is so stupid. I don't know a better word for it. It's just terrible for the community. It's terrible for the kids. It's terrible for the communities. There's no policy upside to this. Well, in a normal world with normal people, I don't even know how you define normal anymore, but that would make sense. But that brings us to this year's legislative session, and Republican state lawmakers, leaders were pretty open and proud before legislative session started a couple of weeks ago about partnering with Stephen Miller, the architect of Trump's anti-immigration policies. And so one of the first things they introduced is they want to make it a crime for immigrants residing in Tennessee who are not here without legal documentation. So if you can't be here, if you're not supposed to be here at all, and you're going to be criminalized, there's no need for school, right? The purpose is to get every immigrant out of the state who does not have legal documentation. But as we've seen, that's a very slippery slope, right? Because that's not who's getting detained, and this whole worst of the worst thing is just bull. So they really just don't want any immigrants who aren't here with and then what does it mean to say they've got full legal documentation? I don't understand any of this. So if they say, okay, you're here illegally under Tennessee law, what are they supposed? Does that mean that Tennessee is now going to build jails and put them in the jails and pay for that? And so instead of people being there and working and contributing and paying taxes, Tennessee taxpayers are going to have to reach into their pockets, build jails, and then house these people for the crime of not having their papers?
Well, yes.
Because they can't say to them, you're illegal here. Tennessee doesn't have the power to pick them up and move them to Illinois. Right.
So we love our prisons here, and Core Civic, which is a huge private prison company, it's also leading the way in building these detention facilities for immigrants. It's based in Nashville and was started by, this was, 30 or 40 years ago, but it was started by Republicans who would work for the Republican governor. And it is one of the biggest campaign donors to state legislators, Republican legislators. They have an enormous contract with the state of Tennessee through the Department of Correction the governor has called Core Civic a good partner. The Department of Justice opened a civil rights investigation into a Core Civic prison just about a year and a half ago. I mean, I doubt at this point that's going to go anywhere, but because of the high number of murders, there was a riot in that same prison last summer, which ended up with a few guards injured, and yet, and also they have they've failed at their contract, so they've had to forfeit millions and millions of dollars, and yet every year the head of the Department of Correction wants a bigger contract for them. So that's the long answer to, are you just going to build prisons and put them in it? Why, yes, we are. And as a matter of fact, our Speaker of the House a couple of years ago, when questioned about a criminal justice bill, said we can always build more prisons. Which I don't know. I kind of want to needle point that on a freaking pillow or something and give it to that guy. I mean,
now it doesn't want to build schools, doesn't want to make housing affordable, doesn't want to spend the money on roads and infrastructure and bridges. But hey, we can become the prison state for the whole country.
Yeah,
wow. That is something to aspire to, Allie.
I mean, I'm a native Tennessean, and my family has been here since the 1700s. I live in the house. I mean, and I'm really fortunate. This is a beautiful thing that my great-grandfather bought in 1890. And so I've got friends who've grown up here, and they say, I just can't stand this state, and I want to leave. And I'm not leaving. I feel very, very deeply connected to my roots here and my family who's spent hundreds of years here. But it's really sometimes I think, what in the world? I don't know how anybody with a logical, rational, working brain looks at this and thinks building more prisons is a great thing to do, especially when the prison company is forking out hundreds of thousands to the people making these decisions.
Right, and crime rates are down. So you have to then declare a whole group of people new criminals in order to fill the jails. Right. So also, people aren't getting murdered. People aren't getting robbed. Right. People's homes aren't getting broken into like they were just a few years ago. Those numbers are down. Yep. But we need to build more prisons. So what do? Oh, wait, there's this whole group of people. We can declare them illegal so we have clients for our jails.
Yep. And by the way, the governor has been super excited about this federal task force in Memphis. Now, Memphis has had crime issues for years. There's a lot of poverty there. And again, that's a topic for a whole other, show about the connection between poverty and crime. But the fact of the matter is that the governor even reported 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks before he announced his task force, that crime in Memphis was down 15%. And, 2 weeks, and says that he has not been talking to the Trump administration. But clearly, Tennessee's Republican leadership loves the Trump administration. They are so far in bed with them.
Well, okay, so the country is beginning to see a little bit of a backlash to this administration. Most people are appalled by what they saw in Chicago, what they see in Minneapolis, really appalled. That poor kid Liam with the little bunny ears.
Oh my God!
Who they used as bait for his dad, and then now they're trying to deport him because he won his case. Yep. Or Donald Trump says, I'm suing America for $10 billion, and Pam Bondi has to defend us so that he doesn't put his hand in our treasury. Yeah, Americans, I think, have said, okay, enough, and his poll numbers are dropping. I've never seen anything like it. There never has been a catastrophic political change for the incumbent party like this one. Is that not felt at all in Tennessee? Are the Republicans, going to do just fine, and they don't have to worry about anything?
Well, Trump's poll numbers have dropped in Tennessee. I'm looking at a poll that came out, I don't know, maybe 4 days ago. So in Tennessee, 43% disapprove of him, 53% approve. So he's still above water in Tennessee. But but it's a 6% drop, which is not nothing. But he has won Tennessee every single time he's won, and he wins with a higher percentage each time.
Yeah, interesting. Tennessee's a fully gerrymandered state. I think you got 9 congressional districts, and 8 of them are held by Republicans. Any chance for a change in the next cycle?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Edwin. So I think there is a slim chance. So Congressional District 5 is held by a fellow named Andy Ogles, and he, I think, is one of the most. He's a complete Trump acolyte and sycophant. He's been endorsed by Trump every time he's won. He's now in his second term. He'll be running for his third term. He has called for a congressional investigation of Nashville's mayor because he says the mayor interfered with immigration efforts here. Literally, like the mayor is getting so much heat from the left because they don't think he's done enough. And really all he said was these people don't share our values. So Ogles has called for a congressional investigation against him. Judges in Nashville, Davidson County had to ask for extra security after he claimed that they should be, I don't think he used the word exterminated, but it was something like that they were a threat to everybody in Tennessee because he found out. Yeah, that's the sitting congressman. And I'm really just scratching the surface. But at any rate, he has got opposition in the primary and in the general election from the Democratic side. I don't think he's going to lose his primary. He remains very popular with the Republican base. But there is a gentleman running against him. There are actually several Democrats running against him. But I think right now the odds-on favorite is the mayor of Columbia, Tennessee, which is also where Ogles is from. The guy's name is Chaz Molder. He has raised $1.2 million. He's got a whopping financial lead over everybody else. Ogles has raised about $231,000 in the last 2 years in the last election cycle and actually owes more to lawyers than he has raised because he's been the subject of so many investigations, campaign finance investigations. So I think there's a slim chance there because Ogles is disliked by sort of old school Republicans. And yes, there still are some who find this offensive. And, Mulder is a little moderate for some Democrats, but, I think he'll pull that crossover Republican vote, whatever's out there. So, there's a lot of there's national interest on this race.
Is this district, Tennessee 5, is that the one that used to be Nashville, but they cracked it in order to
You're correct.
gerrymander it?
Yes, it was held by Democrats for almost 100 years, and so now Nashville, which is the capital city and the second largest city in the state, has 3 congressmen representing it, none of whom live in Nashville.
Okay.
But hope springs eternal, Edwin.
I don't know. How can the rest of the state hate Nashville like that? Aren't they proud
I think part
of it?
of that is, first of all, it's not, you can talk about Fox News all you want, but also there's been a death of small media outlets across the state. And there's a near news desert between Nashville and Memphis. And, that's 250 miles apart. They're still small town newspapers, but they don't have the bandwidth to report. And so all they're getting in publishing, or all they have been getting in publishing, and I don't blame them, is press releases. And we are trying to fill that gap because.
Is local TV cover most of the state or not? Like the Nashville Signal covers how much of the state?
It covers, Memphis has got their own TV, Knoxville, Chattanooga, everybody's got their own. And, I don't want to diss anybody in journalism these days because there are few enough out there doing it. But TV reporters have never typically had a beat to cover their general assignment. And so you don't have, and there's a lot of turnover. So nobody's got that sort of institutional history and knowledge of what's going on.
Oh, that's why we got you. You guys are doing that job.
We try. We've got a good crew. We've got some young folks on our staff who are super energetic that have skills us old-timers don't have. But then we've got a guy named Sam Stockard. We've got Anita Wadwani, and we've got me. And, I won't say how much experience we have combined, but like Methuselah. But we do have that institutional history. And we do content share, and I think that's the best thing we do. I love when I see outlets in West Tennessee being able to pick up our stories about state government because I think that's the only way there's going to be any change.
Yeah. Well, wow. That just does not sound – I'm surprised. I wanted people to hear this, and I wanted them to hear from you today, in part because, the reaction – Illinois was always – blue, and when ICE was here, there wasn't, and it had no support, none, zero, and even the old Republicans here were running out of their houses in their pajamas to try and chase them away. Minnesota's a much more purpley state, with the Republican legislature. But the behavior there, according to Patrick, your colleague, this is shifting voting patterns. They're getting ready for a blue trifecta in the state, in part because of the reaction to this. And then there's Tennessee, where you have a little bit of this in Memphis, but the state is all for it.
Yeah, and I've got friends who are Democrats who think I'm a pessimist or cynic, and I'm not a pessimist. I'm a little cynical, but I also think I'm a realist, and I don't expect there to be any shift in the legislative makeup this year. But we've got a legislator running for Congress who wants to. He's got a bill that says that naturalized citizens can't run for federal office. It's grossly unconstitutional. If you're an Army brat born on a base in Germany, you wouldn't be able to run for Congress. I mean, it's going to get. I hear silence. And somebody's like, "It's not going to pass, is it?" I was like, "Yes, it's going to pass. There's going to be a lawsuit afterwards."
I can't even. I just can't. I don't understand how that is politically helpful. I guess it is, because people want to be thugs and are happy to do it, but. When this era comes to an end, and it'll come to an end, there's going to be a big reckoning. There's going to be a big reckoning. And I don't know how folks in a state like Tennessee, where they're not responsible for the horror show in Washington, but they don't blink. It's going to be very tough.
It's going to be rough, and I'll tell you who's starting to feel it are farmers. Agriculture is I think our second largest industry, and we still
they've been brutalized by this administration. Yep. Brutalized all over the country. Yeah, and they may vote differently. Yeah. But I was thinking of something else. I mean, Holly, I don't know if I ever told you the story. Right after the Berlin Wall fell, I went to what used to be East Germany. And I went to this former concentration camp called Buchenwald, which was this extermination camp in this beautiful forest where they murdered so many people. And the guide who took us through was crying the whole time. And I finally said, "You've been a guide here for a long time. Why are you weeping so much?" And she said, "I've been lying to people who've come to this camp for years. Only after the wall fell did I finally see the documents the communists wouldn't let me see. And I now know that this camp did not exist only to put down the communists. That's not the true story here. And I am furious to the point of tears that I have been repeating the lies that have been fed to me for years." And I kind of feel like a lot of Americans are going to be her.
There's going to be a lot. I also think, to carry on with that analogy, we know there were German people who lived near concentration camps who, after the war, were like, "What? I had no idea there was anything going on here. I just thought they liked to barbecue a lot," right? And I do think there are going to be a lot of Americans, and I think particularly a lot of congressional Republicans when this era is over, who will hear from them like, "Oh, I was really working against it. I just had to be quiet about it." They'll never admit they were wrong.
Right. I know. I ran for governor against a crook in my state 20 years ago. He beat me soundly, Rod Blagojevich. I got to go on with my life. He went to jail. But nonetheless, Holly, in the time since then, if all the people who told me, "Hey, I voted for you," did, I would have won, 5-1. Of course, that nonsense is going to happen.
Yep. Well, as we wrap up, because I know we're running short on time, when I ran for office in 2016, I had a former Democratic lawmaker say to me, "The only people you can trust are the ones who say to you, 'I'm never going to vote for you.'"
That's probably right. Well, I'm glad you did. I don't think I focused on that. I think everybody should run for office. It's an amazing experience.
So do I.
It's a very American experience. You learn about yourself, but also about the communities, and win or lose, and I've done both, you end up much more hopeful because of what you've seen from ordinary Americans. It's a great thing. Yeah. And we're seeing it now. The whole country's seeing it on the streets in Minneapolis and everywhere else. Yeah. So
let's talk about this more some other time.
Yep. Thank you, Holly. As always,
right.
It's a great pleasure
buddy.
to talk. Bye.
Good to catch up, Edwin. Bye.
Yep. All right, we're going to take a break for the news, and then the Washington Monthly's Bill Scher joins me when we come back.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Bill Scher is back. As you know, he is the politics editor of the fabulous Washington Monthly, which I encourage all of you to read, not just because of its news, but because it has the courage to imagine how we make America better, and always has, really always has. Bill, so much this week, but just let's start with Donald Trump's unbelievably ugly, racist video about the Obamas. The senator from South Carolina, back from the dead, said it was a terrible thing. Susan Collins didn't like it. But I mean, I can't imagine a president ever posting anything as disgusting and racist as that. And, when his own crowd gets mad at him about it, why aren't they mad about the same racism that animates attacking Haitians, in Minneapolis, Haitians in Ohio, or Somalis in Minneapolis?
Trump's been a disgusting racist for a long time. That there's no reason to think that's going to change. But it may be that other Republicans start to find the courage to articulate their opposition to it, and maybe courage isn't the right word, because anyone who's looking at the numbers can figure out that Trump's stock in the country is tanking. Now, he pulled off a goalish yet interesting political trick in 2024 by being pretty overtly racist on a number of occasions, while also making inroads in the Black and Latino communities. And so if you're a Republican at that moment, you're saying, hey, all these things that Democrats said, we have to be more open to diversity, we had to be more open to immigration. I guess that's not true. We can win enough votes amongst people of color and appeal to racists at the same time with the magic of Donald Trump. Let's keep.
I lost you at let's keep going.
Okay. The problem for the Donald Trump playbook is that you can only maintain this dichotomy for so long. He was able to appeal, and he didn't win majorities of Latino and Black voters, but he won more than had happened in the past, on the presumption that, one, he's going to make my quality of life better. My cost of living is going to go down. He's going to help tame inflation.
Yeah, strike that from the list. Didn't happen.
And two, the things he's talking about, immigration, it's not going to affect me. He's going after criminals, not me, not my family, not my friends.
You strike that. That didn't happen.
Right. So as Trump has always been a more effective politician when he is not in power. When he is in power and the sales job meets reality, he does much worse. He had a bad 2018 midterm, losing the House. He had a bad 2020 reelection, losing the presidency and the Senate. Didn't even do a lot great in the midterms of 2022 because a lot of his endorsees were still flogging the fictions about 2020, which didn't help him. But 2024, he could do this little, jiu-jitsu trick, and now that's all falling apart. So if you're Tim Scott, if you're Susan Collins, who was on the ballot in 2026, and plenty of other Republicans, particularly in Southeast and Southwest states, which are not only important, in any election, but are growing in importance because of population shifts. Post 2030 census, we're expecting them to get more House seats, more electoral votes. They're going to have to find a way to maintain Latino and Black votes, or and the Trump plan, the Trump strategy doesn't work. And the clearest example of that is what we just saw in Fort Worth, Texas, with the state Senate special election.
I want to talk about that election, and I was going to talk about it later, but let's talk about it now. What did you take from that? That is for a state Senate seat. It was a flip, right? So what did you take from that?
Well, I wrote back in August. I mean, I don't want to make this all about me.
Taylor Remmitt, right? Taylor Remmitt.
Yeah, Taylor Remmitt, Democrat who flipped the state Senate district in the Fort Worth suburbs. Yeah. This is a suburban district with a growing Latino population. Yeah. When Texas Republicans redrew the House district lines, I wrote about this back in August. I'm not late.
Talked about this on our show.
Not late to this train.
Yep.
They try to create 5 more Republican districts for themselves. They did it. 4 of those 5 districts were heavily Latino.
Yeah.
And typically when you're gerrymandering professionally and properly, you don't base your decisions based on the last election, but the last several elections. You're trying to maximize or spread out your reliable vote in more districts. Yeah. You're not hinging it based on a swing vote that just swung one time most recently, because that vote can swing back. And so I flagged this problem back in August.
Yes, you did.
And now you're seeing it happen in real time. This is a place that these are the types of voters that Republicans thought they're going to hold on to, but we had plenty of poll data. We had plenty of their special election data over the last year saying Latinos are scurrying away from what they did in 2024. Again, both on the inflation front and on the immigration front, what Trump's doing isn't working.
I mean, Bill, when you gerrymander like they did, they took districts that, I'm going to make up this math, but it's not completely crazy. If you have districts that are 15% reliably Republican, and you need to carve out a few more of them, you end up making them 10 or 12% reliable. You take down that cushion that you have. And when you then say, and that, by the way, that cushion is largely made up of swing voters, I mean, this could all backfire on them.
I mean, it's looking like ripe for backfire now. I mean, gerrymandering is generally kind of a game of inches, and not necessarily helpful in a wave situation.
Right.
And they can make waves bigger. If you're spreading your vote too thin,
yep,
and a wave's coming,
you can get
that gerrymander is the opposite of a firewall.
Right.
And I think more and more Republicans see that these numbers are not adding up for them, that Trump is not a help to them in the short term, and probably won't be a help in the long term either, because he's not going to be on the ballot. Whatever magic he has to offer you is not going to be available, because he's not going to be around. I mean, he can try to be the power behind the throne, but if posting racist videos and occupying cities and deporting people who don't need to be deported, or is illegal to deport, which is disruptive to families, to communities, to the economy, while you're laying tariffs on top of that, none of this makes any rational sense.
No,
no kid would ever instruct this playbook. There's just Trump's like a shot of heroin that's worked out a couple times, and so Republicans have tried to kind of ride that train for as long as they can. Yeah. But it's not sustainable political strategy, and so don't be surprised if more and more Republicans start to call Trump out on it.
Well, let's talk about the media for a minute. So we heard a lot about this flip in Texas. I think Saturday this week. Louisiana has a special election in a 60th House district, and it's held by a Democrat, and the Republicans have a chance to flip it. If they succeed, I expect the media will be all over it, claiming the Democrats' string of victories is over, that the world has endorsed Donald Trump, that Democrats are by definition losers. And of course, if the state remains Democratic, I expect no one will hear about it.
Mm-hmm. Probably, but again, the district in Texas is not just a random district. This is the linchpin of the person of voter that the Texas gerrymander depends upon. Number one, that's just locally in Texas
is different. Yeah,
right. Two, Texas and Florida are kind of white whales for Democrats. So I don't want to act like it's sort of in the bag for Democrats now. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But
I've lost too many bets betting that Texas would finally flip.
But the Latino vote in general is a critical swing vote, not just in Texas, but elsewhere. It's not a monolithic vote by any stretch, because a Tejano is different than a Cuban in Florida in terms of what their interests are. Yep. But we did see a lot of similarity in movement amongst Latino voters across the country in 2024, whether it was Venezuelan, Cuban, Tejano, Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans aren't even immigrants, but nevertheless, we saw some similarities in movement in that election. And to the extent that what they care about is the economy, like lots of other voters, it's not necessarily racial or ethnic in interest,
right?
But is clearly relevant. Trump promised a better economy and has not delivered, and so if that could very well be an impact, across the board, or cutting across racial groups. But if you're seeing it, I mean, we saw the Latino vote move to the Democrats in Virginia, in New Jersey, and Texas. So it's not just one place. So an anomalous thing might happen in Louisiana, fine, hardly a swing area. That's not going to negate all the other. I mean, Texas is not just a single isolated data point. It's part of a longer trajectory.
Yeah. All right. So let me talk about a few other things with you. You wrote this piece in this month's Washington Monthly entitled Trump's Ephemeral Presidency. Mm-hmm. And I want to get to that. But before we get to that, it can't be ephemeral until he's gone.
Sure.
Right. So let's talk about, a little bit about that. People like me don't think we're not going to have elections. I think we're going to have elections. And I think if they're really close in some districts, so close that we don't know the results that night, and it's going to go into a couple of days of counting, that they can steal that. They're going to send people to the door like they did in Arizona in massive numbers. Bang, they could steal that. But if there is a blowout election, they cannot steal it. They just can't do it. But I'm interested to know, what are your thoughts on how secure the elections are, what we have to do to make them secure, and what margins we're going to need in order to win them?
Well, I don't know if you saw what I wrote this morning.
I did.
All right. Because I did try to do a deep dive on this.
Yep.
I think the first thing to start with is the bluster you're getting from Trump is a sign of weakness, not strength. He is worried about the midterms. And the comment that he made on a right-wing podcast earlier this week about nationalizing the elections, he didn't say, I'm going to nationalize the elections.
Republicans should.
Why aren't the Republicans nationalizing the elections?
Right.
He's complaining.
Yeah.
He's mad that someone else isn't doing his dirty work. If he had the capacity to just take it over, he probably would. I mean,
they've taken ballots in Georgia to try and do something, and I think they did in Puerto Rico too.
But we go farther back. Trump in March, almost a year ago, had an executive order saying that that they had the right to prevent mail elections, to impose proof of citizenship requirements across the country, and that states had to hand over their voter data to the feds.
On the theory that states are agents of the federal government.
Right. That's right.
That's been a Republican theory for what? How many long?
For about a New York minute. But the states aren't coughing up the data. Trump is suing them. He hasn't won any of these cases yet. At least two of them, the lower court put an injunction on the order. And so the executive order is not getting him anywhere. The shakedown of the state's not getting anywhere. He can even send ICE agents into Minnesota, have the Attorney General say, hey, maybe you should give us your voter data, and maybe these guys can come back home. Wink, wink.
Extortion.
Minnesota's not falling for that. And so now they're throwing their effort into this SAVE Act, which is again supposed to have national voter photo ID, national proof of citizenship. Proof of citizenship means driver's license isn't good enough. Passport, birth certificate, and even the logic of this kind of escapes me. I just looked at the list of passport rates by state. The states with the least amount of passports, it's all red states.
And the women will not. You need a birth. If your name's not what it was on your birth certificate, they're going to say you can't vote. So if you change your name to get married, you're out of luck, and you don't have a passport.
You need to show more proof by that. How many people do you know where their birth certificate is? There's people who couldn't even locate it if they wanted to.
And if they do, it costs something. There's a cost associated with getting it.
Right. Yeah. And I know there's some concern this is going to hurt, non-white voters more than white voters. But I don't think it's necessarily going to be that clean. Plenty of Republicans don't have passports, can't find their birth certificates. It's hardly like a surgical strike. And this is even assuming it would pass, which it's not going to pass. There is no way this bill is getting to the Senate, which is why you're starting to see Republicans enter a circular firing squad position, because we saw it with Democrats 4 years ago. They felt that it was existential. There was no way they could win anything unless they passed the voting rights bill. I don't want to be dismissive and glib about voting rights. I'm not saying voting rights isn't important. Of course it is. But they told themselves that they could not win anything at all unless they got this bill passed, which wasn't true. They won a whole bunch of things in 2022. They gained a Senate seat in 2022. They won governor's races in hotly contested swing states, Georgia, Arizona, and the like. But they were so convinced that they had to have it. They wanted to limit the filibuster. They trashed. I'm not saying these are the greatest people in the universe, but they trashed Cinema and Manchin. Because they're so mad. And now you're seeing Republicans do this.
Yeah.
Their backs are against the wall at the midterms. They know it. They see the numbers. They're panicked. They have glommed onto this SAVE Act as going to be their savior. That's what they think it is. Which one I don't even think it is, even if it got passed.
Right.
But
it doesn't get passed.
And they're telling themselves if they don't pass it, that all is lost. All these illegal immigrants are going to vote unless we pass this thing. And I'm going to get mad at John Thune. It's John Thune's fault if he doesn't eliminate the filibuster or impose a talking filibuster. So I don't know if you remember back, 4 years ago, some Democrats felt all we need to do is change the rules to get a talking filibuster. That's going to fix everything. And I had to keep telling folks, like, you can do a talking filibuster right now. You don't have to change any rules.
Right.
The majority leader can dictate that.
Yeah.
And they don't, because you would just grind everything to a halt. It's why you have a silent filibuster, so you don't grind all of their business to a halt. And here's Thune saying, guys, we got highway bill, we got a permitting bill.
It won't pass, but it doesn't have to pass for Donald Trump to say, see, I told you the Democrats are protecting these illegal voters, and so you shouldn't trust the election results. And he can replay to, January 6th. And this time he can say, see, I told you, they don't want to clean it up.
That's great for narrative purposes.
Well, narrative purposes got us January 6th.
I'm sorry?
Narrative got us January 6th.
Oh, I can't promise you there's not going to be some kind of violence because of the way Trump's talking. There could well be violence, and I don't be glib about that either.
Yeah.
That's different than actually being able to steal elections, to suppress vote, to manipulate vote counts.
Yeah.
They had January 6th because they couldn't stop the vote count, and they were mad.
Yeah.
Trump is never going to concede a point. He's always going to want to say, I really won 2020. Look, I got these ballots from Georgia. Look what the ballots show. They show I won. You see?
They show Italian lasers changed the results. Yeah, that's why Tulsi Gabbard was there.
You can say it all day long.
Yeah.
It's not going to change who is administering the elections in the 50 states, and those are the 50 secretaries of state who, by and large, are not MAGA people, are not even the Republicans. I mean, there are a few out there. For the most part, they're not election deniers. And I mean, doing funny things with vote counts is still illegal. I mean, it is possible to be prosecuted for it. And you may think that Trump's going to
somebody sitting in jail in Colorado.
That's right. It can happen.
Yeah.
So everyone's got to think twice about how far they want to take this thing. And look, we still have courts. We still have the Constitution. We still have law. I'm not saying the Supreme Court is super awesome. I'm not saying I agree with most of their decisions, but they didn't let Trump steal the election in 2020.
Yeah.
I think there are lines that they're not willing to cross. We just saw in December, Trump tried to force Illinois to be occupied by the National Guard.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court said, you can't do that.
Yeah. So the Texans who came up here ended up sitting at a naval base near the city. They were never allowed to deploy, and it cost taxpayers, I think it was $26 million for the privilege.
Right. Yeah. So
really important points, Bill. All really important points.
So doesn't mean we should be sanguine, of course.
I got it.
You have to prepare. You got to get your legal arguments ready. You have to be on alert at all times.
Yeah.
But
from a political purpose, I looked at your headline this morning, which said, I can't remember. It was like,
how worried should we be?
How bad should Democrats be?
Yeah.
And I want to just say that elections don't feel like Democrat versus Republican in the normal sense. I mean, I know one's going to win, the other's going to lose because we have two parties. But the idea of elections isn't partisan. It isn't a wedge issue. I think the headline writer should say, like, how rich should Americans be? It's really not. That's just not that one doesn't feel partisan to me. But
I agree fully.
Yeah. All right. Let me go to your other piece, the big piece that you wrote about the ephemeral president.
Okay.
And let me just start with something that you probably didn't write, but I loved that was in there, which was the cartoon at the top, which was a picture of Mount Rushmore looking a little battered with a sign hanging on it that said Donald Trump's face used to be here.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Talk about it.
Well, at the year point of this term, a lot of folks were taking stock, like, how much damage is being done here? Have we lost something? Have we lost our democracy? Have we lost the global rules-based world order? And look, I'm not going to deny a lot of damage isn't being done. Of course it is. And then some things are not reversible. But by and large, what Trump has done has not been through legislating, which is more durable. I mean, if you get a bill passed, particularly if it's passed through regular order, 60 votes in the Senate, bipartisan, right, that's not going to be quickly repealed. You got some buy-in on the other side.
No, that's right. The Republicans tried to appeal the ACA forever, and they can't do it.
They can't. I mean, even that one, technically speaking, it was partisan, because Democrats had a 60-vote supermajority for a short period of time, but still involved a lot of compromise. It involved a lot of compromise with the insurance industry.
Yeah, it's not.
And they don't want to junk it.
It needs improvement, but they can't kill it.
That's right.
That's your point.
Right. I mean, it would cause such disruption that even when they tried, both in the first term and the second term, they just can't get there.
Yeah.
Biden's infrastructure bill. You don't see Trump trying to get rid of it. He's trying to slap his name on things that are part of that bill, but he's not going to kill it. There's literally just the basic quantity of legislation is at a low point for the first term.
For the one big beautiful bill,
right,
whose only enduring feature is the long-term funding of a concentration camp system and an out-of-control national police force to fill it.
I mean, other parts there, again, something that's not even popular.
No.
Healthcare cuts not popular. Tax cuts for the wealthy aren't popular. So there's not a whole lot that you don't see Republicans bragging about this bill as they run for reelection. No. And since it was done in a partisan way, when Democrats get their next trifecta, White House, House, Senate, those healthcare cuts and those tax cuts to the wealthy, boom, they're gone. It's not built to last.
Right.
So executive orders that Trump has done can be reversed by other executive order if they're not being blocked by the courts already. Other things are, internationally speaking, a lot of talk lately about, Europeans pulling away from our alliance, trade deals with China or with Qatar, for example, hedging their bets, putting more money into their own defense. I mean, I don't want to see our alliance with Europe shattered, but at the end of the day, it's not that bad if Europe kind of spreads their love around. It's not the death knell of our relationship. And as soon as Democrats put forth a president that wants to restore that alliance, Europe's going to be like, great, let's do it. They don't want to push us away. They're just worried they were less reliable, which I understand. But once the American public rejects what Trump has been giving them, those relationships can be repaired, I think, quite easily. And similarly with the tariffs. I mean, it's not going to be hard for Democrats to say, here, Democrats rarely get to say, here's a tax cut off the top. Here's their chance. Yep. They don't even have to pass a law. The next president just do it on day one. Boom, tariffs gone.
Yeah,
for everybody.
By the way, when is the Supreme Court supposed to tell us about tariffs?
It's on their desk. They had the arguments already, so really can have it any time between now.
When's it convenient for John Roberts?
I'm sorry?
When's it convenient for John Roberts?
I honestly don't know what the holdup is there.
Yeah.
We had this period where people didn't know, if the court was going to even take up overturning Roe v. Wade, and people were kind of waiting every week. Are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? And some people like me thought maybe they're not going to do it, but I was wrong. They did it. So, I mean, it's going to come down eventually. I don't think we can necessarily read tea leaves what it means. Maybe it means it's going to be a really kind of convoluted ruling. But whatever it is, I mean, even if they say that Trump violated the law, Trump's going to slap on tariffs through some other law, whether it's legit or not, and then you'll go through that court process, and that will take some time. So there's almost surely going to be some kind of tariff.
Politics is the answer. It's going to happen through the political system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you mean I think what about the damage done to civil society? You know, I mean, Americans like me have lost so much confidence in the people who said they were our leaders, the leaders of law firms, the leaders of universities, the leaders of corporate media, you know, all of whom were just eager to sell us out for the third house on Martha's Vineyard. I mean, how does America recover from the internal damage that this man has caused or shown us?
I mean, it's obviously not exactly the same, but I mean, I grew up in the 80s. Plenty of people at the time thought, yeah, I can't believe Ronald Reagan's president. How do they vote for this idiot? Where is America gone? How are we ever going to come back? How is there ever going to be progressivism again? You know, and the pendulum, of course, eventually swung back. Or when George Bush became president and the Iraq War happened, I remember how we were ever going to get over this again. America it's futile. We're never going to get anywhere in this country.
We didn't get over it. Each of those was a shock to the system that made people more distrustful of government, more certain that government couldn't help us, more willing to vote for a madman like Donald Trump, who said, "I'm your retribution," because nothing works. So
we have a long range, you know, erosion of trust in institutions, which is not good. And I don't claim to have the magic answer to fixing that. I mean, obviously, when people can say all day long, well, just make government work better. Like the whole part of the problem is that managing a federal government is not a simple task that you just do over a day. But I do think that what Democrats should be doing, and it's something else that I wrote about in that ephemeral presidency piece, is part of what has to be done is to rebuild the federal workforce that's been decimated by Trump. If you want the government to work better, you have to be able to attract good talent into the federal government.
I don't think that'll be hard. I think people will be eager to raise their hands.
And there needs to be, you can go back to John F. Kennedy and the Peace Corps, and it's the kind of thing where I think people kind of know what happened there, but actually reading the words and seeing how fast that turn. I mean, literally, Kennedy gives a speech summoning the idealism of America at the end of the 1960 campaign in November, and floats the idea of a Peace Corps in that speech. And almost immediately, all these young Americans are sending in letters saying
when
that they want
to sign up. Yeah.
And Kennedy says in March, he's been president for 2 months. He's saying we're getting more interest in the Peace Corps than the rest of the federal government. That's the kind of chord that he struck. And I think that people are going to be so exhausted and disgusted and bereft at the literal rubble of the government that you can see with your eyes in Washington, D.C. right now. And if someone can come along on the Democratic side and say, you know what, we can come together as a people and rebuild this. And if you want a job with meaning that you're going to be proud of, you're going to look back on and say, I did that. We have all sorts of positions open right now across the government that you can be a part of. I think there's going to be a real appetite for that that could heal a lot. I mean, I can't promise you that we're going to extinguish every ember of proto-fascism that we've seen in this country, but I think we can get back on a better track and summon the people's better angels.
Well, all right, Bill, that's going to be our last word today, but I love ending on better angels. And for all of you, sign up, read Bill's work, get the Washington Monthly. It's part of Better Angels. It's just part of being ready to do the job that we all need to have done. Bill, as always, it's a pleasure to catch up.
Same here. Take care.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. For the second time today, I'm going to take your calls at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. But before I do that, I just want to talk to you about some of the other things I do in the week. I've gotten some interest in this. I do other shows. So you can catch all of them if you follow me on Blue Sky, which is a social media app, and I talk about them, or through Substack, It's the Democracy Stupid. But every Tuesday, I do a show with the editor of Lincoln Square Media. It's a video cast, and we talk about the news of the week. Every Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock in Chicago, the former Congressman Joe Walsh and I have a rather unvarnished conversation about the state of the country and what Democrats can do about it. And every Friday at, again, noon Chicago time, I have another show that's a little bit like one of these radio segments, but it's video, and you can get that as well through the It's the Democracy Stupid site. So join me the rest of the week, too. Yeah, I enjoy being with you on the weekends, but you know what? The rest of the week is, it's all work these days. All right, let's take your calls, and let's start with Dave.
Hey, Edwin. It was about a year ago, too, that they had a picture of you giving up a coat for that one homeless one or something, that time on the L or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. That was, it was an odd experience for me to be TikTok famous for a few minutes. That was definitely not what I expected in life.
Yeah.
But I guess it just shows how much people needed a little bit of good news.
Yep,
you know?
You're right about that. That's like, to get away from what I'm going to talk to you about, like with the forum yesterday, God, it was refreshing, that how the three handled it, and even the politicians, they weren't sniping on each other and that, you're going to have a little spirited one because if, you want something bad enough, you're going to fight, for it. But
absolutely.
It was it almost seemed like a time warp, We'd gotten so used to people throwing mud, slinging mud, and doing all that kind of stuff. So that was very refreshing,
Yeah.
Back to it was in the old days,
Right.
Each had respect, Anyway, so you can get to others. I was mentioned to the screener about that, where Trump and them, they had posted that awful racist video picture of the Obamas.
Yes. I do.
And of course Trump not one to ever take the blame or apologize even for it. And
he took credit for it. He's proud of it.
Yeah, idiot. Especially I believe isn't it right around Black History Month now too?
Yes.
And that, but I got to thinking though. Turn the clock back about 12, 13 years ago. You remember when his big thing was about Obama's birth certificate and
that's how he got his start.
Yeah, but remember the comedian Bill Maher did a bet. He said, "I'll bet you $5 million to any charity of your choice that you prove that your father wasn't an orangutan." that time.
Yeah.
And of course Trump, he had, he came up about a month or so later, a few weeks later, with it proving that he had a birth certificate and that he wanted his $5 million, and to which Bill Maher just said he believes it. He just started laughing, and then within a month and a half, he tacoed out again. He didn't do the lawsuit, but
yeah.
But he has no humor, this guy.
Oh, he's a very dangerous man.
You're right about that.
Very dangerous.
Anywho, let me clear so others can get their word in, but I just thought, I thought about that.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. I do.
Be well, Edwin.
You too. Nancy, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing, Edwin?
Thank you. I am doing well.
Well, then let me get back to, if you please, allow me to get back to beating my same old drum, because I will continue to do this until somebody actually listens, although I have heard a few people, mention it, where your last guest just was talking about someone has to step up and be a true leader. I've been saying that forever. Now I'm sounding like all the talking heads, I told you years ago. Anyway, I've been saying this forever. We need someone, and this is the reason that scumbag is sitting in our White House and destroying it, by the way, to step up and say, hey, wait a minute, hold on, take a breath. We need to stand together. Never mind this, arguing about everything, calling each other names and all that. There have been so many mistakes this two-party undemocratic system has made over the years, and that's the reason that piece of garbage and all his maggots, how appropriate, because maggots are found in garbage, that they're destroying our country, and there's not a damn thing they're doing about it. And please don't give me that wait till November crap. We will be done by November. We're giving them too much time to our legal system. What the hell? Where's the National Supreme Court about the terrorists? They could have done that overnight. They sat back, this two-party system sat back and allowed them over the last 50 years, mostly, to me, it's never been a democracy. Minority rule has been from day one, but they have sat back and let them destroy our educational system, take over all the media. We no longer have government ruling us. We have corporations and billionaires ruling us. And that's how this scum got into our White House in the first place. He should have never been in there the first time. He was never legitimately elected. And now Jack Smith sits there and shows us proof of, he should have been in jail, but no, we get, because if anybody could screw it up, it's the Democrats. And when I say Democrats, I'm talking the politicians, because it's not we the people. We the people are going to take care of this, but guess what? We're not going to have any support. We're not going to have an army, a military behind us who's going to be able to defend us. We are going to get into a civil war. People are going to die, and it's all going to be because of an undemocratic two-party system that has been destroying us from day one. And if we would have, we can't even get ranked choice voting. If we would have, what do they call it, a parliamentary system where you have a percentage of representatives for each, for how much you won in the election? I can't remember the word for it. But that's what we need. This Democrat and Republican game that they've been playing, and they have because Congress hasn't been doing a thing for a long, long time. And he sits there for 6 years now and says, they won the election. And nobody says anything. But what did the Democrats do in 2024? Voter suppression, all this other stuff where they were screwing around with everything, Russian involvement, all this other. Did the damn Democrats do anything? Hell no, they did not. They couldn't even ask for a recount in certain districts where if the voter suppressed, if the suppressed votes would have been counted, Kamala Harris would have been president. So don't give me this crap about, the people voted for this. No, they didn't. They never did. Not the first time and not this time. And it's a shame. It's a pitiful, disgusting shame that he ever got in there in the first place. And then they weren't smart enough to keep him out of there the second time. Who's the buffoon? They call him names all day long. He gets press coverage 24/7.
Okay. I don't want you to have a heart attack talking to me. I don't.
Well, thank you for letting me then.
I appreciate it. I do, as always. I don't agree about all of it, but I think it's worth hearing. Thank you, Nancy. I do. All right, Paul, you're back, round two.
Hey, Edmund. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Let me ask you a question about your last guest. So, your question to him was, America's reputation in the world, and how damaging is this? And he went back to, we voted in Reagan, and we thought we'd never recover, and we heard what he said, so you can restate that. But it kind of reminded me of this: is that climate change. Mother Earth really doesn't care how bad we mess it up, because if we pollute ourselves into extinction, eventually Mother Earth will sort herself out and everything will return to its pristine nature, except we'll be gone. So if there's an analogy there that, eventually we'll recover, but maybe not in our lifetime. What he was saying was, democracy be like the planet and sort itself out again, and everything will be hunky-dory. Yes, maybe, but sometimes political damage lasts a long time, generations. And that's the part that I'm worried about or concerned about. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. I mean, and I talked about the damage that's been done, accumulated since the 70s, really, where the right wing has found ways to undermine democracy so that it doesn't work as well as it should. And that is, undermining the Voting Rights Act, undermining all that Citizens United stuff, all of these things that the Supreme Court has done that have undone acts of Congress in order to make our country less democratic and more corporatist. And Americans are feeling like, well, then none of it matters. My vote doesn't matter because the democracy hasn't worked well. But the solution on offer from Donald Trump is, hey, the democracy doesn't work well, so let's abandon it. And that is, that's the wrong answer. The right answer is democracy doesn't work as well as it should. Let's fix it. Because you cannot have, I've been all over the world, you cannot have good outcomes for people. Their lives don't get better in autocracies in the same way because the government's not working for them. It needs to work for us.
What was Bill? What was his point? I don't understand what was he driving at?
It's just, Billy, his point was, he agreed with that. He said, look, the social consequences are real. But he's just saying politically, when it comes to winning back power, the long-term damage that could have been done would have been if Congress had passed a law, saying there is no more Social Security, there is no more Department of Education, there is no more EPA. But in fact, the law of the land is those things all exist. So a next president is able to stand up and say, I'm sorry, we're just going to follow the law and things will be better quite quickly. That's his point.
He did say, and I thought that the good thing about them kind of putting all their eggs in one basket in the big bill is that all you have to do is repeal that. Is that his point too? I mean, that's what I have been thinking.
It's one of his points. Yeah. I mean, and he just says, yeah.
So it's not as dismal as perhaps says, okay. That's all I wanted to know.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Roosevelt, you're next. Roosevelt.
Hello?
Are you there? There you are. I can now.
There you are. I wanted to add on to what one of your callers, I don't remember who it was. This thing with Trump and the Obamas, it's hitting home. Karma. What do I mean by that? African American GOP bootlickers, such as Tim Scott and that other guy, never think of his name, from New York. The karma's coming back to them. I mean, finally, they just see where Tim Scott had said that the most racist thing that he has ever seen, and he was praying to God that it wasn't true, which we all know that it was true, that Trump put that up there. And I believe is another distraction for the Epstein files, because how is he going to stop, E, other countries from putting out a list of victims? How is he going to cover that up? How is our DOJ, Pam Bundy, going to be able to cover that?
Well, you're ahead of me. Wait, you're a little ahead of me. Wait, 1 second. Wait. Hang on.
Hitler. Did you see that report?
Yeah, I did. I want to go there with you, but before you go there, I want to go back to Tim Scott.
Germany?
Hang on. Before we go there, can you hear me? Roosevelt, can you hear me?
I can barely hear you. What's going on?
I don't know.
Hold on. Maybe it's my end. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm not saying anything. How about now? No?
No, I can't. I can barely hear you.
Don't go away.
The volume up.
Don't go
anyway,
away.
I'm going to hang up. See what you think. I don't know if you got.
Don't hang up. Don't hang up.
Okay.
I'm going to make this better on my end. Can you hear me now?
No.
Still no?
Here, let me. I can't hear you.
Well, it should be better. I've done everything.
Now I hear you. Now I got you.
So let me back up to Tim Scott, because he said it's the most racist thing he's ever seen, and he had the courage finally to say that. I would like him to look in two other places. If this is the most racist thing he's seen, I'd like him to look at Ohio and the Haitian community there and ask him what he sees when he sees what his government says about them. And I'd ask him to go to Minnesota and look at the Somali community there and say, look, what do you see your government saying there? And I agree when the president posts about the Obamas, a completely racist, disgusting thing, it deserves to be called out. But when the same government says just as vile racist things about Somali U.S. citizens, about Haitians who are here legally, working every day, paying taxes, making their communities better, and they're going after them with the same racist intent. I say to Tim Scott, you know what, buddy? Open your eyes and look a little further. This atonement of yours doesn't feel real to me. Roosevelt?
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll go to your other point, which is Germany.
My other point is the Second Amendment. The hypocrisy of Kyle Rittenhouse and the GOP. Are they saying that the problem is the weapons? And not because that's what they usually say. They say the opposite. The GOP has always said and supported the Second Amendment to the point that I think you even mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago, that even the NRA has criticized Trump for the disgusting things that he said about the gentleman that they killed in Minneapolis.
Alex Preddy, yeah. Well, so hypocrisy is this. Look, there's no... The blinders are off. They think everybody should have a gun provided it's their guys with the guns. Remember on January 6th, the Secret Service said to Donald Trump, we can't let these people in. They're all armed. This isn't safe. And Trump said to them, no, they're my guys. Take down the barriers. Like, right? What he wants is, yeah.
Okay.
They just don't want people on our side to have guns.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Am I wrong in saying that the same thing they did to the governor of Michigan when they were trying to abduct her and sequester her? Weren't they armed to the teeth? The goofballs that were trying to abduct her?
They were armed. And the government, and by the way, this was Trump's first term, and the FBI was very helpful, and they stopped it. You think for 1 second Kash Patel would, if it happened again, that they would be helpful? All the people of the talent to help them have been fired.
And Double E, while I'm on the subject, did he pardon those guys in Michigan that try to abduct the governor?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. But I don't know that for sure. I also don't know if they were also charged with state crimes. I just don't know. It's a good question.
And I'm going to close it with this, Double E. Trevor Noah these comedians at night, on a nightly basis, are doing a fantastic job of informing us, and triggering this guy. He's so easy because not even 24 hours went by from Trevor Noah, South African, by the way, an immigrant, and he triggered him to the point that he wanted to sue him. I don't know if the lawsuit has been placed as far as Trump, but he's so easy to trigger when it comes down to the subject of the emails. And Jimmy Kimmel does it on a nightly basis, not to mention the other guys. But I think they're doing a fantastic job.
I do too. By the way, so are athletes in the Olympics. And when they're asked what's going on in America, they are having to be very careful. They're being great ambassadors for our country, and they're talking about American values. And they're saying, I don't always agree with everything my government does. So I'm very proud of the way they have handled the pressure of being on the world stage at this very tough, while they're also trying to compete athletically, and when America's government is embarrassing them. And I might add, they booed when the vice president showed up, and oddly enough, NBC showed none of it. That's a decision. It's one you got to think about.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Double E. Have a good.
You bet.
Night.
You too. All right, Dan, finish us up.
Hello.
Hi, Dan.
Hello. Edwin, you there?
Yes, I am.
I just wanted to tell you another fantastic show. I truly believe you do one of the best jobs there is, and how you handle also the callers, especially. I would just like to add, first of all, about Tim Scott. Let me ask you your opinion. Do you think this will change anything in the way Tim Scott votes? Of course not. And the reason for it is fear. They all are fearful for their lives. And that's why, at least for the ones that are still half sane, the Republicans, congressmen, and senators, they're afraid. And this is where we are. Now, I might also add, as the previous caller mentioned about the Second Amendment, there's estimates of over, and I suppose it's over 600 million by now, how many guns there are in this country. I can assure you, Edwin, that Republicans and the crazies don't have them all.
No, I know.
We have some too.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right.
And when it comes to it, and I think it will, I think it's going to come to it when this election is stolen. Something is going to have to happen, or we have no country anymore.
Well,
I would just like
I appreciate that. I do not believe we will come to a civil war. I do believe they will try to cheat. I think they could succeed in a close in elections that are close, where you really don't know on election night who won, and the counting goes on. They will have large mobs out there trying to do what they did last time, and they might be able to succeed in some of those. But I think that's more why we have to, and I believe we will, show up in unbelievable numbers so that it isn't even close, so that they cannot cheat. So they can't cheat. No one wins. No one wins in an armed civil war. You've seen it all over the world and through centuries. No one wins.
Well, we've won before, Edward, before our time, but we've won before.
Huge. Well, maybe we did. Remember, the vast slaughter that happened, and for 100 years after that war, none of the promises that people died for were kept. You went into Jim Crow, and it wasn't until 1964, 100 years later, that we got a Voting Rights Act and a Civil Rights Act. So maybe that war we won. I mean, surely it would have been different had the results been different. But huge cost. And the difference in people's lives, it took a long time. So I get your point. I'm happy which side. I'm happy that the government didn't fall and the United States stayed a country, and that at least our ideals prevailed, so that 100 years later we could keep our promise. But 100 years is a long time, and maybe there was a more peaceful way to get that done. Maybe. I mean, Lincoln sure thought so. He didn't cause that war. He didn't want it. But the nice people in Charleston fired on Fort Sumter and started that war.
But see, that's my point. I mean, we keep going back. We keep going back to how many years ago. This is something new. This is something new we have never faced in our lifetime.
Yeah, I think it's a peaceful war. I mean, their Fort Sumter, and I keep wondering what it was. It might have been January 6th, but it surely, in a more peaceful way, was when they said, we're going to cheat in this election and we're going to gerrymander. Texas